everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to my kitchen. Today we will be making green tea and lemon shortbread cookies in the shape of Yoda to celebrate Star Wars Day. This is a perfect recipe that you can make at home with your little rebels. Let's get started. This recipe comes from Cooking is Messy and the link will be in the notes below. Let's start with the ingredients. You will need powdered sugar, unsalted butter, 3 egg yolks, all-purpose flour, zest from 1 lemon, and salt. I always like to add vanilla extract to any baking recipe that I do. We will also need matcha powder. Matcha powder will not only give these cookies their green coloring, but will add a rich, buttery flavor. Matcha is 100% ground green tea leaves. It contains caffeine and is used in baking, cooking, and drinks. Matcha may be difficult to locate. I got mine at Whole Foods. For this recipe, we can substitute matcha powder for green food coloring. You won't get the same green tea flavor, but you will achieve the signature green coloring of our favorite Jedi Master. And you will still end up with lemony shortbread cookies, which are delicious. Our next step is to prepare all of the ingredients and measure everything out. Let's get started. The first step is to zest 1 whole lemon. Next, we're going to measure 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar, followed by 1 3/4 cup of flour. Next, we're going to separate 3 eggs into their egg whites and egg yolks. It's okay if you break any, they're all going into the same place anyway. Now, we're going to add 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of matcha powder into the powdered sugar. Now that we have all of our ingredients measured out, we're going to start by mixing the wet and dry ingredients separately. The first step, as you saw earlier, was to mix the powdered sugar and the matcha together in a small bowl. We're going to then put that into our stand mixer so that we can combine it with the butter and the eggs. This is a pretty typical step whenever you're baking cookies, is to blend the sugar and butter together first and then add the eggs, and then our dry ingredients come next. So we're going to go ahead and put the sugar and the matcha into our stand mixer. And if you don't have a stand mixer, you can use a hand mixer, that's fine. You can also use a spoon to mix it by hand. You just got to use those arm muscles that you have. It's a good indoor workout that you can do while stuck at home. Let's make sure we get all of the sugar and matcha into our stand mixer. Next, we're going to add butter. Now, as you saw earlier, we're using a full stick, which is 1/2 cup, plus 2 extra tablespoons. So we're going to add that into our mixture. Now, you are going to use the paddle attachment if you have one of those, and every once in a while take a spatula and scrape down the sides because you want to make sure that everything gets mixed together. So you can kind of see that it's very powdery. The butter is broken up and pretty smoothed out. So now with the mixture going, with the mixer on low stir speed, we're going to add our egg yolks one at a time. And it's okay if they did break during the separation. That's fine. It's all going in the same place. Don't forget to pause every once in a while and scrape down the sides. You will notice at this point it's a much smoother, wetter consistency, which is perfect, what we're looking for. At this point, you can add your green food coloring. Now, what I recommend is making it a little bit darker than you want your cookies to actually end up being, because what's going to happen when we add the flour is it's going to actually lighten it up. Just like when you mix paint, you're going to add white to a color, it makes it a little bit more pastel. So just as many drops as you want, whatever color that you're going for, this would be the point to add it. It's also going to be the point to add a little bit of vanilla extract. So I just put a couple little splashes in there, and then we're going to incorporate that with our stand mixer. Again, making sure to scrape down the sides as we go. It's a very smooth, buttery, green mixture, which is exactly what we want. The next step is to mix our dry ingredients. we want to do that in a separate bowl. So we have a separate bowl over here. We're gonna take the flour that we measured out earlier and we're gonna pour that into our mixing bowl. And we're gonna add our lemon zest from 1 lemon. Zest is a great way to add flavor. It's very citrusy, has a great smell, and it really brings out the other flavors. And as you remember, we're using matcha, which is the green tea, and green tea and lemon go great together. So we're gonna mix those up, whisk it. Now we're gonna use a pinch of salt, just a very little bit. It counteracts the sweetness of any kind of baking recipe. Now, if you have a container like this, like me, you're gonna wanna pour it into your hand first. And then you're gonna take just a pinch and pinch it into the flour, maybe a little bit more. So give that a good mix. And we're ready to go. We have all of our ingredients mixed together and we're just gonna mix them together at this point. And what we're gonna do in this step is we're gonna slowly add our dry ingredients to our wet ingredients. And what that's gonna do is make sure that it's very incorporated, as well as make sure that there's no big lumps of flour. And don't forget your spatula, because you're gonna use that again to scrape down the sides. And what we're gonna do with this is we're gonna wrap it in plastic wrap and we're gonna put it in the refrigerator. And it's gonna sit in the refrigerator for about an hour or up to overnight. So this is something that you can make ahead of time, which is great for kids' parties or holidays. You can make dough like this, sugar cookie dough, cut out cookie dough, and have it ready to go the next day. It's a great activity to do with kids. You can decorate them with icing, sprinkles, or in our case, Yoda faces. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it into some plastic wrap, and we're gonna put it in the fridge. And the reason we're putting it in the fridge is because we want to keep that butter really, really cold, because that's going to give us a really good pastry consistency with the dough, as well as give us enough of a solid dough that we can cut out the cookies and they'll maintain their shape once they're baked. So that's about it. We've got our dough. I'm going to put it in the fridge and we'll come back in an hour and I'll show you how to roll it out and make some Yodas. At this point it's been an hour, so I just took the dough out of the refrigerator, and you'll notice at this point it's a much more solid piece, which is perfect for rolling out with our rolling pin. At this point also we're going to start preheating the oven, so we're going to set that to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, so that will get going while we start cutting out our cookies. So you're going to lightly flour your workspace. I did just clean this up. Remember, we did make a little bit of a mess earlier. So we're going to use just regular all-purpose flour, lightly cover the surface so that way our dough doesn't stick to the counter as we start to roll it out. So we're just lightly flouring the surface. You can use your hands for this, or a spoon, or what have you, but it's okay to get a little messy when you're baking. So we're going to take our dough and we'll probably just cut it in half to start. You don't need to roll out the whole thing in one shot, and that's another good thing about cookies that are cutout cookies. You can save some of it for later. You can freeze it and defrost it and have them ready to go at any point. So we're going to take half of our dough and form it into a ball, into a disc, and kind of flatten it a little bit. You don't want to handle it too much because you don't want it to heat up. You don't want your hands to melt the butter that we just spent an hour chilling. You're also going to flour your rolling pin slightly. Again, this is so that your dough doesn't stick to the counter or stick to the rolling pin as you are working it. And we're going to cut out the cookies. We want them to be about a 1/4 inch thick, so that's what we want to roll our dough to. And it's okay if it's not exact, but we just don't want super thick cookies, because if they're too thick, they're not going to bake all the way through and maintain that green color. We also don't want them to be too thin, because then they'll get too crispy. Now, at this point, you're going to take your cookie cutter, and we're going to also give it a little bit of a flour coating so that, again, it doesn't stick to the dough. So we're just going to go around and cut through the dough. Oh, sometimes they stick, and that's okay. We can just lightly pop them out. And you want to get them as close together as possible so that you're not wasting any of the dough that we just rolled out. All right, now we're in pretty good shape. We can lift them up. Now I'm using a cookie sheet that has this silicone mat, baking mat on it. The benefit of using the baking mat is it keeps the bottom from burning before the rest of the cookie is cooked. So that's really good for this kind of a cookie because, again, we want to try and maintain our green color as long as possible. So we're just going to very gently lift up our cookies and we're going to place them on the mat. And make sure they're about a ½ inch to an inch apart from each other because we don't want them sticking to each other. And now we have our tray of Yoda cookies that are ready to go into the oven. So we're going to put them in for about 10 to 15 minutes. We want to make sure that they don't over brown or burn. So we're going to give it 10 minutes, we'll check on them and see how they're doing. Alright, it's been about 10 minutes and I took the cookies out of the oven. That was perfect amount of time. They cooked through. There's just a little bit of browning on some of the edges of the cookies. We're ready to move them onto a cooling sheet, so we're going to do that. With the non-stick mat, they come up really easily. You don't have to do much, they don't stick at all. If you don't have one of the mats, then you can absolutely use a vegetable oil spray on the pan, something to make sure that they don't stick to your cookie sheet. At this point, you want to make sure that they get cooled. Plenty of time before you start decorating, putting any icing on them. Again, you don't want the icing to melt. And we'll see how they turn out afterwards. Alright, I decorated a few of our cookies with some green writing icing. And I think they turned out pretty cute. Well, that's it for me. I hope you had fun baking today. Enjoy your cookies. Make sure you enjoy them with some glue milk, of course. And make sure that you like and subscribe to the Florham Park YouTube channel. If you have any questions about anything that we did today, please leave a comment below. I'll try and answer them as fast as I can. And with that, happy baking, everyone, and may the 4th be with you.